What is going on, guys? PoliticsGaming here, and today I'm going to be doing a live stream, or not exactly the normal live stream that I usually do, but this is actually going to be a debate between me and Zach Z. If you are familiar with who Zach Z is, Zach Z actually debated, or actually didn't debate, but he actually wanted to debate Let's Talk Elections. Let's Talk Elections, if you're familiar with him, is actually the guy who literally makes election predictions for all of his YouTube career. And so, yeah, this is actually something like that, and I'm actually going to try to see if I can actually drag a couple of people in here from the server Let's Talk Elections. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and I already have them in the call and stuff like that. Alright, so since I already have that down, I'm going to go ahead and unmute myself, and I'm going to start talking to them. And I'm going to go ahead and unmute myself. Alright, now that I'm live, so everyone else can hear you right now, guys.
Okay, yeah, I just checked. We're live. We're live.
Yep.
Is there any way to pull up the chat and not the video, because I don't want the echo? Okay, yeah, I've never been live before. Is there any way to
oops. Well, just like it's in your dashboard. Just mute the video.
Oh, right. Okay.
Like you should be looking at it right now through
yeah, I see it.
Live dashboard.
Yeah, I just okay, I did it. All right. Everything's good on your end, Lane? Or sorry, PG.
Yeah, you're an idiot. Yeah.
Yeah, I am. Oh, Lucas has joined the chat. Great.
Dang, you got more watchers than me.
That's mostly because I heavily advertise this on my social media, so I'm gonna get a lot of my friends and acquaintances watching this. All right, so. Oh, all right, so.
Oh my God, we got Paul in here. All right, yep. So since we got all that down, you want to go ahead and kick off this debate?
Yeah, it's good on your end.
Yep.
All right, Cole, you ready?
I'm all set.
All right, let's go. Let's start it off. Socialism. All right. Oh, and we agreed. We agreed before that, Lane. You can give the first dialogue to start the first question. So Lane goes first, and I'll just.
You're an idiot.
I
said call me PG.
Okay, guys, come on.
Sorry, I'm so used to calling you Lane. All right, PG. What, do you not want people to know your first name? What's the problem?
It's not my first name. Whatever. Just I don't care if you call me a never mind.
Okay, whatever. I'll call you PG. My apologies. All right. All right, Cole, kick off the first question.
Okay. Hey there, viewers. We're gonna start off with socialism.
Yes.
We'll start off with PG. PG will answer first. Give us your thoughts.
All right, I'm gonna kick Lucas from the chat real quick.
Whoa, he's about to finish it.
Wait. Oh, crap, I didn't.
oh, there we go. It just got finished.
Oh, come on.
All right, so we're talking about socialism right now, right?
Okay, go ahead.
God, this is a horrible debate already. I'm sorry. I'm looking at your chat. It's just fucking hilarious.
I know. Just make a response.
All right. Well, what was was there a question I was being asked, or what was that? You just said socialism, and then.
What do you? Go ahead.
Give us what do you think the problems with socialism are, and how do they affect the modern day economy?
Everything. Honestly, like I'm hearing echo from Zach's end, honestly, so that's something distracted.
Well, the video's on mute, so it shouldn't.
Yeah, no. Anyway, so socialism honestly is a failure of a system. So is communism, and I mean I know like people always say, well, I mean socialism and communism are pretty different. Honestly, they're not. They're still more of a government-based system. and I believe that both of them, as a whole, are a failure. And every single time they've been tried, they always end up failing because inherent government dependency is a bad thing, in my own opinion. And I believe that socialism. I mean, you go over to like Scandinavia and stuff like that, and they always say like, well, we're democratic socialist. They're actually not socialist at all. Well, I mean, you can
social democrats.
Social democrats or anything. I mean, they call themselves that, but I mean, they still have an inherently I keep on saying inherently, and that's hilarious. It's more of a capitalist system because I mean that's how they actually survive. The only things that are under government control is healthcare, schooling, I think the prison system, but like I mean, it's just completely different from like the American prison system because both of those are actually under government control, and it's more of just some sort of system that and I mean in the past, I mean we looked at socialism, we always said, okay, well I mean the Soviets are trying it right now, look what they're doing, and I mean people such as Ronald Reagan like literally made the best jokes about it. I mean you can look that up, but it's it's more of like a just. And now that we're looking at socialism now, especially from a viewpoint of a millennial or just a kid who's about to go into the workforce for the first time, we're looking at it and saying, okay, well, socialism seems to be pretty cool because we get free healthcare, free schooling, free this, free that. Like, there's no. And especially as a completely different society, we can't transition from American capitalism to American socialism because American socialism just would not work. Especially since, like, these countries in Europe can afford it because, I mean, their populations are completely smaller than that. Germany has about 80 million people. Norway, Sweden, they have about less than 20 million people in both of those countries. And they are pretty well off because, I mean, they don't have to take care of 325 million people in one country, or 330 million people, depending on how the 2020 census goes out. And, like, it's just a system, especially in the United States, that's not going to work with free healthcare. I mean, healthcare, we're already looking at costs from Bernie Sanders' plan that would skyrocket the cost of healthcare from like the trillion we're paying for now to about 30 trillion in the next 10 years if that plan was actually implemented. But obviously that plan is going to fail because it's an extremely expensive plan. It's not going to work, especially as the United States, because it is so expensive. And you can try to say, well, I mean, it's going to reduce healthcare costs. Well, that's because that was actually a very concern. I know. I'll go ahead and end my point right now.
Yeah.
It's people always say, well, I mean, it's going to save people money. Yeah, it could save people money because they're not paying for it anymore. It's because the government's going to be paying for that. But there's also other things that you're going to be paying for, which is going to be higher taxes, and then the U.S. federal deficit is going to explode because we're trying to take care of everyone's healthcare plan, and that's just going to make it even worse. And once people start seeing, okay, the government's paying for our stuff, then, just start breaking your arm, breaking your leg, go to the hospital, don't worry about it. But the government has to worry about it because they're the ones who are going to start dealing with that debt. And then we're going to be the ones who are going to be paying for that debt because they're going to start reducing healthcare costs, they're going to start reducing infrastructure spending. Our infrastructure is going to get even worse than it is right now, and yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. That's it. You're done.
Yep.
Now, Zach, your response.
All right. So your characterization of socialism is basically the same that everyone on the right does, which is that socialism equals communism when this can't be further from the truth. Socialism is a umbrella term, meaning that it encompasses many different ideologies underneath it, including democratic socialism, social democracy,
and communism.
and communism. And not only that, you portray socialism as though it's a polar force to capitalism, when this can't be further from the truth. FDR showed that to us during his New Deal era, in which socialist programs and progressive programs.
You're about to get me started on something, boy. Got to bring up my boy FDR.
I did not interrupt you during your 10 minutes dialogue, so don't interrupt me. Anyways, what I personally advocate for is social democracy. And if you ask me, social democracy and progressivism are one and the same. They advocate for the same principles. And you were saying that socialism and capitalism not go together. Well, they're, for the most part, meant to go together. One main tenet of social democracy, which Bernie Sanders advocates, which Bernie Sanders has not been advocating for, and same with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the two leading figures of the progressive movement, have not been advocating for what is Keynesian economics, and that's the main tenet that I think should be advocated for more. And Keynesian economics boils down to the fact that if you have a big gap in...
Did you say community economics or Keynesian?
Keynesian.
Oh.
Keynesian.
I know. I just thought you said community.
No. Keynesian economics advocates for a system where if you close the gap between the poorest and the wealthy, because closing the gap isn't a moral argument, at least it shouldn't be a moral argument, it's an economic argument, because if you have a big gap between the poorest and the richest, then there's not any economic, there's not a robust economy, because that money isn't flowing. That's money that's not going towards cars, food, appliances, because when you have money towards the top that's not being spent on those things, you're not going to have a robust economy. And Keynesian economics advocates for heavy taxes on the wealth in order to benefit the middle class, so that they can give that, so that money can flow freely in the economy. That's what Keynesian economics advocates for. And Keynesian economics was the principle that was used by FDR during the New Deal era in order to reinvigorate the American economy, and by Barack Obama, not as much, but it was slightly implemented following the 2008 housing crisis to bring the United States out of the recession. These are economic principles that have not been spoken about by Bernie Sanders, and I think that's a big mistake, because it's a reasonable ideology, and it's one that I think that many people could find reasonable. And I think that for the most part, Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez have been calling themselves democratic socialists in order to create publicity, and I think that's mostly a mistake, because they're not democratic socialists, they're social democrats, which there is a difference between. And what you're saying is that socialism and communism are essentially the same thing, when that cannot be further from the truth. Because when you're looking at it from a world scale, China's government, which is by nature called communist, although it's not technically the truth. And then when you look at Canada's government, they have socialist institutions. But Canada and China's government, you cannot equate, not in the slightest. So socialism, since its creation as a term, has been whittled down to just being a very general ideological term that can almost mean anything. So you have to be specific when you talk about certain socialist quote-unquote principles. And what I advocate for in particular is progressivism, which is the nature of taxes on the wealth in order to benefit the middle class, in order to create a robust economy. And that has been proven time and time again, especially by FDR. I think that FDR perfectly captures the progressive movement, and I think that that's something that many people... So I'm just checking the time, that many people lose sight of, and that there's looking to countries like Sweden and Denmark, when in reality they should be looking towards FDR and the programs they instituted right here in the United States. And that's not something that people are saying, and particularly Bernie Sanders has not been setting, which I think is a big mistake. But capitalism and socialism are meant to go hand in hand. They're meant to go hand in hand, and people are saying that they're polar opposites because, and for the most part, it's fear mongering, because people still remember the Cold War, and they equate socialism and communism to be the same exact thing, when that cannot be further from the truth. In fact, democratic socialists and social democrats protested against the communist system that the USSR had. So that's my dialogue when it comes to socialism, and you can go on and go ahead. I'm done speaking.
Okay, so you brought up a couple of things about, like, Franklin Delano Roosevelt and stuff like that, and by the way, I can hear my echo again.
Right.
So FDR honestly made the economy way worse than it needed to be during the Great Depression.
Way worse?
Yeah. And I mean, I was looking at, like,
before at that point. The only time it's been replaced was under Bill Clinton, who also instituted taxes on the rich. So I don't know what you're saying when you're trying to make the point. Okay, just go on. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
So I'm looking at annual change in real GDP since 1930. So 1930.
Statistics. This is all supposed to be just off the top of our head.
Yeah, I know. I'm going off of both.
You can use the statistic you're looking at right now, but just in general, don't.
So, oh wait, that's UK GDP. Okay, so in 1930, we were getting like severely low economic growth. Here, I'm gonna mute you for a second because I can hear my voice. So in 1930, we were getting a lot of negative GDP growth. That was like spanning from about like 8% to about 6%, then all the way to about 13%. And then in 1935 or 1934, the economy got a little better because, the New Deal policies were actually starting to get instated. Then in 1935, it started to get really better. We started seeing like 10% GDP growth and 9, then like 15, or not 15, that's like 13. But around like all the way into 1940, that's whenever the economy started getting worse again, because of these policies where we were starting to pay for more and more people. Because like it's not, I'm not saying that the policies that he instated were bad. They were good-hearted in nature, but at the same time, they did make the economy worse, and we never exactly recovered during that entire time. That I just done me to do, by the way. The United States never actually recovered in the time from 1929 to 1939. The only recovery we started to see in full was in 1940.
Okay, again, I think you're nitpicking for the most part.
No, I'm not nitpicking because this
you are, because it's not like there was a major economic decline in 1940. The economy kept growing at a steady pace, and after World War II, that just became even more rapid. And after World War II, we became a superpower, and that was for the most part FDR's progressive principles that were instituted into the government that helped us.
But if we never got involved in a war, the Depression would have spanned all the way into 1950.
That is not true. That is not true. The Depression and the war are two independent things. We got involved in the war in the first place because we were able to get out of the Depression using FDR's progressive principles.
No, we got involved in the war because Japan attacked us at Pearl Harbor.
Okay, but you're looking at specifics, and I'm looking at generality. Like, we would never have been able to get involved in the war, and at least not to the scale we were. I mean, I agree with you that we were prompted to enter the war as a result of Japan's attacks on us, but we would not have been able to enter the war as a major military force if it was not for the economic state that we were in at that point. I think that's a pretty plausible. Wouldn't you say that that's pretty plausible?
No, because honestly, the reason we were in an economic depression doesn't mean that we can't get involved in a war, because we were the ones that were producing most of the weapons for the Allies, and that's what started to cause economic growth in the first place, is because we were giving all these weapons to the British, the French, the Soviets.
Would not have been at that point if it was not for the that were there to begin with.
Wait, what?
Okay, we would not have been able to get to that point in the war. We would not have. Okay, we're kind of veering off topic here, but I'll finish my point. We would not have been able to get to that point militarily, at least not at the point of World War II, if it was not for the progressive programs that FDR instituted.
Like what?
So, Social Security, Medicare, just the general government interventions that FDR and his government took in order to get the United States back on track.
So do you believe that Social Security has an inherent connection to military spending?
Okay, now you're grandstanding. That's not what I meant at all. I'm saying that the general economic state that the United States was in at the time of World War II was what prompted us to enter the war at the full force that we did. We would not have been able to, economically speaking, we would not have been able to enter the war at the full force if we did not have the capital. I don't know how that's something you can disagree with, because that's just
we would
not have been able to enter the war as a poor country. I think it's a better way to phrase it. We would not have been able to enter the war if we were a poor nation.
Okay, guys, we're gonna have to move on.
Yeah, I'll finish this point up. I just want to ask him this one more question. Like, you're talking about capital and the money that we're spending and stuff like that. How can you say that whenever all of our money was literally going into Social Security and healthcare and stuff like that? And then we also, I would have to look up the numbers on like the economic spending of Social Security and healthcare in the 1930s and 40s all the way into the 50s. But do you deny that World War II like helped us recover even faster?
I agreed with you. I said that was the case. That World War II and our mass output of weapons to the Allies is a big major factor.
So do you also not also, but do you deny that the Depression would have gone on any longer if we had not gotten involved in the war?
The Depression ended before World War II.
No, it didn't.
Yes, it did.
It didn't. The Depression didn't officially stop until about 1940.
This is factual data that you can look up. The Depression ended before World War II. For countries that were heavily affected, like the United States, like Germany, like Japan, the Depression ended before World War II. The United States, I'm not speaking to other countries, but the United States was able to get out of the Depression primarily because of the progressive principles and ideologies that FDR instituted into our government, which remain a part of our government today.
Okay. So unemployment. I'm gonna make this point, and then we can go on to the next one, which is whatever.
Well, if you make a point that...
Yeah, I know. Okay, so unemployment, but whenever the Depression started, was just under 5%. Then it exploded to about 21% in 1933, and then it just kind of started to slow down and went to about 15% in about 1937. It looks like. And then 1939, it went all the way back up to about 18%. And then once the war started, which
the Depression ended in 1939.
The Depression?
Yes.
Yes, because of the war. The war started in 1939.
Okay, the Depression period did not end because of the war. The Depression was an event that took place in numerous countries across the world. So you can't say that the war ended the Depression for each and every single country.
Not every single country. I'm saying for the United States. Like, I mean, even I actually meant to say this earlier. Like, even Nazi Germany recovered PJ, way before the United States did.
This is becoming an argument over World War II, and this is not what was the original intent.
Okay, we should move on to legal immigration.
Yeah, I'm kind of not happy that we were talking about the war for half that discussion, but yeah, go on, I guess.
It's because it's a pivotal thing. That's why we're talking about the war.
Well, socialism is a topic.
All right, let's go, boy.
guys. Okay, so first question is to PG. Are illegal immigrants a net gain to the U.S. economy?
Yes and no.
Explain.
Mostly, I mean, it's a mixed bag, honestly. Like, I mean, I kind of take something that one of my friends says. Like, I think getting immigrants for specific specialties, you know, getting them in and then like saying, okay, well, I mean, like if you're good at this job, then we can use you for that. Good at this job, use you for that. Blah blah blah. But I think, wait, did you say immigrants or illegal immigrants?
The topic is illegal immigration.
Yeah, illegal immigrants.
So are they a net gain?
Yes, a net gain.
Oh God, no! I thought you were talking about immigration in general. No, they're not.
No.
Is that all?
Like illegal immigrants are a net loss for the United States because actually for any country, like where they're entering illegally, because for one, it completely screws up the census. We don't know how many people are inside of our country unless we're actually like counting them in the census, which is
Does that affect
also
the economy, though?
which is a completely different bag of discussion. But coming into the country illegally is a loss because I mean, it's more money we're having to spend on you, because once we detain you, we have to take care of you for like this amount of time before we can finally send you back, because I mean, we're taking care of like illegal immigrants like at the detention centers at the border or all over the country, because they're not just at the border actually. Like, we're taking care of those people and saying, okay, well, like, we need to make sure we know who you are, blah, 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 then we're going to send you back. Like, it's just more money that we're having to spend on them, which we spend a lot of money on illegal immigrants already. We're spending over $100 billion on illegal immigrants right now. Most of that is...
stretched out over a very long period of time.
No, I mean, that's actually like
year
annually.
2 years is not that much money in the grand scheme of the...
$100 billion is not a lot of money.
And in terms of over a year, when you're putting in the context of the United States government spending, it's a portion, but it's not a lot. It's not a lot.
$100 billion is $100 billion, no matter how much the United States is spending.
Over a period of a year, when you're thinking in terms of government spending, that's...
So what about $600 billion? That's how much we're spending on the U.S. military.
Yeah, I agree. I think we should decrease military spending. Is that your point?
No, I'm saying, like, in an annual sense, it's not a lot of money. Just like you said. $100 billion and $600 billion is...
Which is why I think we should decrease military spending.
So why not decrease spending on illegal immigrants whenever we're spending over $150 billion on them?
I'll get to that once you're done with your statement. Go on. Are you done?
So, no, well,
okay,
kind of.
I don't want to rush you. Go ahead.
No, I'm not. I mean, technically, we can have this thing go on for more than an hour, so we don't have to rush ourselves.
Yeah, I
agree. I can already tell this is going to go on for more than an hour.
Yeah, this is half an hour, and I kind of want to go back to socialism as well, because I think we kind of wasted that topic. Cole, do you think do you have the time to spend over an hour on this?
If not, then we can get another moderator in.
Yeah.
Okay, I agree. Time limit is lifted. Let's just go forward with how.
Hell yeah!
All right.
So
are you?
I think I was just about done. I thought I was gonna say something else, but I didn't.
So your point there was that we're spending $100 billion or 150, depending on which year you're looking at or which time span you're looking at, on bringing illegal immigrants in. Not only is that stretched out over long periods of time to the point where you're just spending $8 billion or $7 billion a month or less, because it fluctuates depending on the rate at which illegal immigrants are coming in. One thing that Republicans and the right in general tends to leave out when they're talking about illegal immigration is that illegal immigration is down. There's been a visible decline in illegal immigration since Obama took office. Obama deported more illegal immigrants than any other president. They don't call him the deporter-in-chief for nothing. They called him the deporter-in-chief while he was in office because
they didn't want to make him look like a bad guy.
Well, how does a porter-in-chief make you look like a good guy? Whatever. That's beside the point.
That would go on into a discussion about like the differences between how like Obama was treated and how Donald Trump is treated, stuff like that. But
that's entirely separate. I don't want to divert into a different discussion like we did with socialism. Let's not do that again. But was that Cole or PG?
No, that was me.
All right. So a study by the Cato Institute, which is a libertarian think tank. I'm not looking this up. This is just off the top of my head. A study by the Cato Institute taken in Texas, your home state, showed that illegal immigration and instituting illegal immigrants as citizens into the United States has a positive effect on the economy. And not only the rate of crime amongst illegal immigrants, because this is something that's brought up by the right pretty frequently, that illegal immigrants commit more crime than citizens, which is especially brought up after the whole Molly Tibbetts murder. It's a false statistic. Illegal immigrants do not commit more crime than citizens when you're looking at it per capita. Not only that, there is a net gain when it comes to the economy and bringing illegal immigrants into, or giving illegal immigrants citizenship for those who deserve it.
So are you arguing for giving them citizenship, or are you arguing, like, what are you arguing for?
I'm saying that giving illegal immigrants citizenship has a net gain on the economy. Statistics have shown that. The Cato Institute, which did a study in Texas, has shown that. And you were saying that the spending that we're using to bring illegal immigrants in the end has a net decline in the economy, which is false. The spending that we're using to reinstitute illegal immigrants into the United States is not any significant figure. And especially at this rate of illegal immigrants, I think that once illegal immigration, I think that if illegal immigration was heightened overall, it would be a problem. I think that we would see different statistics then. But at the rate we're seeing now, when it comes to illegal immigration every month, we're seeing positive effects on the economy. We're seeing a positive effects on the economy because not only is it not the net spending that you're doing on instituting illegal immigrants into the United States does not surpass the economic benefits that they give to companies and to small businesses because they provide cheap labor. And I think that for the most part, that is a problem. I think it's something we need to address. But if we're looking at it based on raw numbers, they have a positive effect on the economy, and studies have shown that.
And honestly, I would actually have to disagree with that because I'm actually looking at a statistic right now.
Disagree with the facts, or from who?
This is by FAIR, the Federation for American Immigration Reform. So what it says right here is that total government expenditure. Huh?
Is that looking at it per capita?
No, this is total.
Yes, exactly. You can't look at it total because illegal immigrants.
Total is total is just a fact. I mean, saying per capita. I mean, per capita only goes so far.
But if we're not looking at it per capita, then it's not a relevant statistic. Because illegal immigrants obviously have a very small portion of the United States population when you're comparing them to actual citizens.
11 million is still a pretty significant number.
Compared to the 360 million legal citizens of the United States, it's a pretty small portion.
325. I'm only correcting. I'm only correcting.
Yes, you're only correcting.
So so this is total. This is going to be my point. Federal cost of the oh my god, I can hear myself. Hate my voice. Okay, so federal cost of illegal immigrants is 45.8 billion. By the federal government.
Billion.
Huh?
So not 100 billion, as you said before. It's
no, I'm getting on to that. It's 45.8 billion by the federal government. State and local cost goes up to 88.9 billion. So total national cost is $134.8 billion. So then we go into the total tax contributions by illegal immigrants.
That's going towards what? Because I said that I don't want to bring up statistics of my own. I didn't look it up.
Statistics help out a lot, actually.
I know, but this is a debate. This is supposed to be information off the top of our heads. If we're going by statistics, then it's just going to be us analyzing piece by piece, statistic by statistic, and that's kind of whatever. Just go on, because I did bring up my own statistic. I didn't look it up. That's just something on my head, but you have the right.
I mean, I already knew about that. I mean, whenever I brought this up earlier, that was off the top of my head. I was just like, I looked it up to confirm it.
That's fine.
So then we go on to total tax contributions by illegal immigrants. Federal taxes being paid by illegal immigrants is $15.4 billion. State and local taxes go to $3.5 billion. So the total taxes paid is $18.9 billion. So they're not even making up the amount of money that they're actually taking by the government. So that's a total $116 billion deficit that they actually have.
But what are you looking at in terms? I don't understand the reading.
The context?
Yes.
So what kind of context are you wanting?
What that money is being spent towards specifically? Is that being spent towards bringing illegal immigrants in and reinstituting them, or is that being spent?
Federal spending is going toward federal education, federal medical costs, justice expenditures like deportation hearings and stuff like that, asylum hearings. You know, that's also going into welfare, and that then it goes into total.
I'm talking in terms of giving illegal immigrants citizenship. I'm not talking about in terms of the actual...
Are you wanting to give all of them citizenship?
No, absolutely not. I think there absolutely are people who get into the country who shouldn't be here. But the vast majority of them are here because they fear for their lives. People, the main rhetoric that's on the right is that they need to wait their turn, but that's not the case because for the most part, it's a long and arduous process, an expensive process for many immigrants to try to get citizenship in the United States, which many cannot afford, many could not wait for because...
It's actually not that expensive at all. People have come into this country with $20, became a legal citizen.
Not only expensive, it is dangerous. It is dangerous.
To become a citizen?
No, to get into the country. To sneak into the country because they can't get here through legal means. It's not a matter of whether they want to or don't want to. It's a matter of whether they can or cannot.
There are dozens of consulates all over Mexico, which they need to people need to pass to get into the United States. They can go into that consulate and they can ask for asylum.
Money, and then they need to spend time in order to become a citizen. You understand?
Or they could literally just like go up to the border, go through start the process of going into of becoming a citizen, like so many other people have done.
What? Do you know how getting citizenship works?
How does it work?
What's the process? What's the process for getting citizenship?
No, I mean, if you're asking me, then I think that you know how it works, so I'm just gonna let you explain it to me.
Why are you dodging the question, though? I asked you.
I'm gonna be honest. I mean, I'm not exactly familiar with the process of it, so that's why I'm asking you.
Yeah, the process is expensive. It takes time, and it involves...
How expensive is it?
Not only studying, it involves lots of studying in order to become a citizen. It involves money. It involves luck. It involves a whole lot of luck in order to become a citizen, especially when you're an impoverished member of Latin America. It involves lots of spending. It involves lots of studying, and for the most part, there are significant I'm not going to say it's
because we want our people to speak English. We want our people to know about our country.
Are you being directly affected by them not speaking English? Are you?
Well,
how does that directly affect you? How does that directly affect you when they're speaking Spanish?
Okay.
Instead of
so I work for a pharmaceutical company. I don't do pharmaceuticals. I actually just do grocery work, but it's a pharmaceutical company overall. So I directly speak with people, and I've run into people that barely speak English. You can see where the problem comes in. That
I agree they should learn English if they live in the United
States.
But
so whenever I'm dealing with people that can't speak English, there's a big language barrier that whenever I'm trying to communicate with them, I can't officially communicate with them because we don't speak the same language. And if we let more and more people in, especially in the kind of state that I live in...
PG, they can't learn English if you're not giving them the opportunity to learn it.
They can learn it themselves before they even come into the country. There are so many people...
You have to spend money to give them the programs to learn it.
They don't. They can learn it on their own.
Yeah, you do. How else are they going to learn Spanish?
Why should the government...
Not Spanish.
Why should everyone depend on the government to, like, teach them everything?
It's called public schooling, and that's a government-funded program.
But does that mean that we should depend on the government as a whole to teach us every single thing we need to know?
I'm talking about illegal immigrants. I'm not talking about U.S. citizens.
So who's supposed to pay for their schooling? Us?
We currently are, and taxes have not raised dramatically as a result of it. So, yes.
So...
That's what taxes go towards, the betterment of the society as a whole. It's not theft, it's going towards programs that should benefit you in some way. And when you're giving that, and when that money is going towards programs to help institute illegal immigrants into the economy, you're benefiting businesses, you're benefiting the economy as a whole, and so far it's been a net gain. I think it changes depending on the rate of illegal immigration that you're having into the country, but I think that at the current rates we're seeing, adjusted for inflation and adjusting for the rates at which they're coming in, it's having a net gain on the economy. That's
Okay.
what we're seeing now.
Okay, so we're going to move on to another question, still with immigration. So the president has suggested that people should be allowed status and citizenship based off of a merit-based system. Now, do you agree with this? Why or why not?
Can I start this time?
Yeah, I've started
All right.
like the past 2 times, so you can go ahead.
Yeah, you did. So I agree with the premise of a merit-based system. However, I don't agree with how it's being instituted. But that's the thing about Trump in general. He says a lot of things that people agree with, but then once he actually gets around to doing them, people don't agree with how he's doing them. It's not a matter of whether it should be done, it's a matter of how it's done. But when it comes to the merit-based system, I think that most people would agree that you can't let anyone into the United States. I think that there should be some sort of screening process, and I think that's something that virtually everyone agrees with. I mean, for the most part, it's been a straw man argument that the left supports open borders, which just isn't the case for the most part. At least you won't find any rational borders. But a merit-based system is what we pretty much already have, at least for having citizens come here legally. But then you have the issue of people who come here illegally and they don't get through that system. Once they're here in the country and they're here illegally, what President Trump wants to kick them all out regardless of their merit. He doesn't want a merit-based system for illegal immigrants currently in the country. That's the main difference between the two. Because like I said, we already have a merit-based system for people who come here legally.
It's just not ironed out because the system is so old. That's one reason why it needs to be reformed.
Well, no, it's not that it's so old. It's just that they're coming here illegally, and there's no government oversight, obviously, when they're coming here illegally. There's no testing or any merit.
Your mic's cutting out.
But merit-based illegal immigrants as well. Because people in the country who have an individual basis, there are people in the country who give back more to the economy and who do not commit crime, not who benefit the economy, at least in their net gain, and who are being productive members of society. And those people, there is no rational argument for why they should not be in the country. If they're pulling their weight and if they're working hard and if they're trying to achieve the American dream, then why should we kick them out of the country? Because there's no net loss with having them in. I think for the most part, the argument comes down to xenophobia when you're looking at it at that basis. You can go on, PG.
So what did you say was xenophobic about that?
I was talking about the individual basis of immigrants who are benefiting the economy. I'm talking about basis. I'm not talking about overall. I'm not saying illegal immigrants out of the country. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that when you're looking at on an individual basis, on an individual immigrant basis, for illegal immigrants who are benefiting the economy and who you can look at and know that they are working hard and that they have not committed crime and that they are...
Actually, they already have committed a crime.
Yeah,
as soon as they cross that border, they commit a crime.
If they're not committing crimes that directly affect... If they're not committing crimes that directly damage society... Because
it is damaging society because it's building a precedent that nothing will be done against you for committing a crime.
Well, they have no choice.
If I steal something from a store, should I be punished?
They're not stealing things from a store. They're running for their lives.
They're stealing places for legal immigrants to take.
Okay, do you think they should stay in Mexico, and do you think they should stay in Honduras and El Salvador, where gangs pretty much run the entire country? Do you think they should just stay there? Because you're right, it does set a precedent. It does set a precedent that if they come here illegally, then... And
if there's a precedent that is being placed, and if that precedent is bad, then we need to stop that precedent before it becomes more remote.
So the only way to stop that precedent, PG, is to prevent them from coming into the country in the first place and to kick them all out. Do you think that's what we should do? Do you think we should send every single legal immigrant in the country back to where they were, regardless of how much work they're doing, regardless of what they're doing, because they crossed over the border illegally? Do you think that should happen?
the ones that are providing the most benefit to the country, that's
completely subjective. That is completely subjective.
Immigration is subjective.
More or less than someone else is completely subjective. Whether my beliefs on this
just
issue
because you're looking at a TV and you see all these people inside of a detention center, and that makes you sad inside.
I have not brought up the separation issue once. You just brought that up, so don't use that in the argument. Well, we can cover that if you want to. But let's just get through.
No, because that's the only reason that a lot of people that I mean, we can talk about it. I don't care. And that's why I'm bringing it up because this immigration argument is more of an emotional based system. Judging your politics off of emotion is the worst thing that you can actually do.
You're phrasing it as though it's a moral system. You're phrasing it as though
it's because immigration is a moral argument right now, especially now in the United States. It's a moral.
I'm not making a moral argument. You're making.
That's the only reason some people actually hold views like yours.
I'm making an economic argument. And the economic argument is that when you let illegal immigrants in, for those who have not committed crime and those who have passed merit-based tests, and if you provide them citizenship for those who have already here, that promotes the economy. I'm not talking about morals. We can go into a whole argument about morals. I'm talking about the economy. And the fact is that giving illegal immigrants citizenship to work in the United States to achieve the American dream benefits them, and it benefits us, and it benefits the society. That is the economic argument.
But we're still making a $116 billion deficit off of it.
But that does not create a net loss.
It does. It's a net loss of $116 billion per year.
$160 billion is a lot, but so is the economic value that they give back to the United States.
Like what?
You have to look at cost.
Economic value in taxes?
Not just in taxes, and the work they're doing for businesses. You're talking about you're saying just taxes as though that's the only thing that they give back to the United States. And
that is the only thing they give back to the United States. That's the only thing anyone gives back to the United States.
Really? So working for a business and working for an employer, it doesn't do anything? You think it's just taxes that run the economy?
They're benefiting that business, which that business pays taxes into the government. But if we were to kick out all 11 million immigrants, the economy would not collapse.
The economy would be in turmoil.
It would not be in turmoil. That is a lie.
You have any idea how much labor they're providing for the United States for small businesses?
Only 11 million people.
Because their labor force is gone?
To say that the economy would be in turmoil, 11 million people is a lot of people, but it depends on who those people are working for, because these people are being paid the worst money. They're not being paid minimum wage.
Yeah, and I'm not saying
except
that's right,
in certain states that literally give them that protection.
Okay, I'm not saying it's right, but that cheap labor is what many businesses thrive on, and I agree with pathways of getting them to be paid more. But if we're looking at it as it is right now,
if they're still illegal, then I don't think there should be a pathway for them, unless they're a citizen.
What?
I said if they're illegal, I don't think there should be a pathway given to them unless they become a citizen. I think that pathway should include them becoming a citizen.
The facts and statistics do not agree with you on that. You're the one making a moral argument. I'm making an economic argument.
No, I'm not making a moral argument because the only thing I said is that
setting a precedent of letting illegal immigrants in because it's illegal. Just because it's illegal and you believe that morals should prevent that. And I think that's for the most part the moral argument that is made.
The moral argument that
I'm making an economic argument. I'm not saying.
No, you're not making an economic argument because earlier you were talking about. Hang on. I know this looks like it's getting into an argument. I'm just saying. You're not making an entirely economic argument because earlier you were talking about saying, "Oh, well, should we send them back to Mexico and Honduras where they're being killed?" That's not an economic argument. You're literally saying you're basing it off of emotion, saying
because I made that.
No, okay. It's because that was my entire point. That my point is that the argument that people have is that, oh yeah, well, if we don't have them here, then they're gonna go back and they're gonna die. That's not pure economic argument. That's literally basing it off of your own emotion. That's the only con. That is the only con of.
I'm looking at the facts and statistics, and illegal immigrants giving them citizenship to those benefiting the economy and those who states
So why can't they
benefits
just
the
go back
economy.
and then just help their own economy? Their own country's economy. Mexico,
Because their
Honduras,
countries are run by
Nicaragua.
gangs and ours isn't.
Like what?
Mexico, El Salvador, Honduras, Guatemala. Guatemala is plagued with corruption under President Jimmy Morales. There's no opportunities for them to go there, so they come to the United States where there is opportunity.
No, they have the opportunity to go there. They just leave.
To benefit our economy. This isn't charity. I'm not describing charity. I'm describing a simple give and take system in which the illegal immigrants are granted citizenship and they work hard and they benefit themselves and they benefit the economy, and it's a win-win. At least in that scenario. I'm not saying that that's the scenario overall. I'm saying that on an individual basis, if they're giving back more to the economy that they're taking away, then why should we remove them? Why should we remove them?
Because we're spending so much money on them, and like one of my problems is that these people don't want to become citizens. They just don't go through the process. If these people came in and just automatically
spending on
What'd you say?
The amount that
both of your mics are like acting so weird right now. Hello?
You're cutting in and out.
Yeah, I know. So are both of y'all.
Wait, Cole. Yeah, Cole.
Okay. I think we're gonna move on to gun control.
I think I just disconnected from OBS.
Wait, am I back on? Hang on.
I can hear both of you just fine.
Yeah, his OBS is acting weird.
I'm gonna type in the chat.
Okay.
Hang on, give it a second.
Yeah. And I might have to be out of here by like 1:15.
Okay.
Are you in Central Time?
East Coast time.
Yeah, he lives. I know him personally.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, I guess. Right, yeah, it's still working. It's still working on your end. I'm watching it right now.
Okay, let's move on to the next question then.
Okay, bye.
Okay, so do you think taking precautions, especially in schools such as arming teachers and increased security measures, would decrease school shootings?
Yes.
Go on.
I believe that having protections, such as the same ones that we have in an airport, in places such as football stadiums, basketball arenas, hockey arenas, stuff like that, public events that a lot of people converge at, I believe that it would be a benefit if we actually had the same people. I'm not going to sit there and say, well, we need to put our veterans in there and put them in there and protect our kids because they don't have jobs. Because I think that's a very weak and stupid argument. But having guards and stuff like...
It's going to be hard for me to respond, but go on.
I'll kind of give a TLDR in a minute.
Okay.
I think that putting the same protections that we have in schools, that we have in football stadiums and sports events, and our airports and stuff like that, all other federally funded areas, I think that would be a benefit.
Okay, I can respond?
Yeah.
Okay, so regarding putting arming schools is essentially making the schools more entertaining for the students. And I think the whole point of schools is to make the students feel comfortable there, and teachers is just going to make students feel like they can't go to them. They're going to make teachers. Wait, I think my action just cut out.
Hang on. Leave OBS and come back. I mean, not OBS, Discord.
Wait, did you just cut out?
Yeah, well, I ended the call.
Oh, you did?
I left it and came back.
Okay.
Sometimes that works, so do it.
Yeah, I'll do that right now. All right, am I back in?
Yep. I will have to
Okay.
actually correct myself for a second. Like, I'm not saying that we should be arming teachers. I'm saying that more school resource officers and people that are actually trained. I don't think teachers. I mean, arming teacher or letting teachers who actually have guns and stuff like that and who want to participate in it. I think that would be something that would actually be a benefit, but forcing teachers to do it is sort of a bad idea. Like, I mean, it should be more of a volunteer system. Like, you know, saying, okay, well, this teacher is going to go ahead and like be trained to carry a gun, stuff like that. Because I mean, teachers are educators. I don't think they should be expected to protect it, but I think they should also at least know the benefits of having a gun in the classroom. Because of, you know, hiding in a corner. I mean, we train for this a lot in school, hiding in a corner and waiting for the kid to just come in, because there's nothing stopping him from shooting that door handle and then just walking right in this classroom. There's nothing stopping him from doing that.
Okay.
Stuff like
Can I
sorry. Like
Yeah.
stuff like Parkland and stuff like that, you know, I mean, none of the teachers had guns, and the only guy that had a gun was too much of a coward to go inside of the school. So that's the end of my... Okay, you can go on.
Okay. So my beliefs regarding gun control have remained the same for the most part. I believe there's two different solutions to two different problems regarding gun control. One regarding mass shootings like the ones in Parkland and the ones in Texas that we saw, and in Nevada as well. I think that's a separate solution for that. And then there's a separate solution for the everyday gun violence we're seeing in places like Chicago and Detroit, where it's a completely different issue and it's a completely different solution, at least in my opinion. If we're talking about the mass shootings, I believe that gun control is necessary, and I believe that most of the measures have been taken so far, and I believe they've already been highlighted en masse. But I think that for the most part, the issue regarding mass shootings is mental health. Mental health is something that I think people should focus more on compared to gun control itself, because the Parkland shooter had definitive mental issues. He had many warning signs, and yet he had never been on any medication. He had never seen anyone professional, and he was able to... I think that's, for the most part, the reason why he was able to commit the mass shooting in the first place. And what you're proposing when it comes to arming the teachers, you're treating the symptom and not the illness. That's what you're doing. Treating the illness would be to go right to mental health. And mental health is a complicated and a jumbled mess in terms of American healthcare, if you ask me. And there's so much stigma around it as well, which for the most part I think is why there's not been significant progress on mental health in the United States. But our attention should be there, because if we solve the mental health issue, which I don't think it'll ever be solved per se, but I think it could be mitigated, because I think there's a huge issue of mental health amongst teenagers in this generation, especially. If we focus our attention there and rather on arming the teachers, which doesn't solve the problem, you're still going to have people who are going to shoot up the schools, and you're probably going to... And yes, you're right, arming the teachers would most likely stop it, but will they kill people? Yes. Is there going to be instances where the teachers cannot get to the students before they commit murder? Absolutely. So it's not a foolproof system, and it's not efficient either, because you're creating an environment in which the students should feel scared, and you're creating an environment where students who have mental health problems don't feel comfortable enough to go to their teachers because they feel as though it's a threatening environment. That's not efficient, and that's not a solution by any stretch of the imagination. A solution would be pouring money into mental health programs in order to help benefit students who are suffering from depression, suffering from anxiety, in order to prevent it from happening in the first place. Not arming the teachers. That's not going to solve anything in terms of the mass shootings occurring in the first place.
So I would say again, like, I mean, again, I'm not saying that like all teachers should be armed. I'm saying that it should be more of a volunteer-based system. A volunteer-based system would basically be saying, like, I mean, teachers, you know, who personally have a gun, they can go ahead and sign up for that program and say, hey, like, I have a gun. I can go ahead and you don't have to teach me anything. I've already taken the classes, everything. They can show the proof for it.
Okay, but you're creating an environment for students where they feel threatened, where they feel.
That's why like it wouldn't be a public thing. It wouldn't be saying, okay, I mean, you could have a sign maybe outside saying our teachers are armed, blah blah blah, but it wouldn't be public knowledge on who has those guns.
You wouldn't be solving the issue, you'd just be solving the symptom. And not even solving the symptoms, you'd be...
That's why you need to hit both of them. You need to solve the symptom, and then...
For the most part, it's one or the other. You can't pour money into both. And
actually you can. You take cough medicine to relieve you cough. You're treating the symptom and the illness.
Okay, but there's a definitive way to cure the illness and not a definitive way to cure the symptom.
You can't exactly always cure the illness because the illness is always going to be prevalent. We're always going to have terrorist attacks.
But you can take measures to prevent it from happening in the first place.
You can prevent it from happening. I'm saying, so you can prevent 19 people from dying by not having a coward in your SRO team.
But you're not preventing 19 people from dying. They're still going to die. You're just going to...
You're going to reduce the amount of people that actually die, though.
But would you rather prevent it from happening in the first place rather than having less people die? Would you rather have no people die?
How are you going to prevent no people from dying?
Mental health and preventing them from having the mindset that they want to kill their students and kill
people are still going to have that mindset. That's the thing.
You put your attention on mental health.
You can
not if you analyze. Not if you are able to pick out people who have clear issues, like this kid, Nicholas Cruz. Both his parents died. Both his parents died. He had significant issues in school. And he had access to weapons. The warning signs were abundantly clear. He commented on YouTube saying he'd be the next school shooter. It was abundantly clear, and yet he did it anyways. He did it anyways, and he was able to slip past.
He was able to slip past because everyone was being stupid. Because his caretakers were not paying attention to him.
Yes, so
Broward Sheriff's Office was not paying attention to him whenever they got 49 calls to his living place. They knew that his parents had guns. They knew he had access to guns. They didn't take any action against him.
Do you agree that students would feel threatened and intimidated knowing that their teachers owned weapons?
It depends on who you ask. Personally, I wouldn't feel threatened if I knew that some teachers had guns because they're not going to use it on me. Unless, the teacher is going to go mentally insane, go grab someone else's gun, and then start shooting up the school. But that's never happened before. A teacher has never shot up a school.
You're leaving weapons in a school and accidents will occur, and that's the other aspect of it as well.
But we have so many SROs that are literally doing the same thing, and they have weapons in the school.
You cut out. Could you say what you said again?
I said that we have already had those things, and it's already worked out very well. Except, for Parkland. I'm saying that we already have SROs in our schools, but we just need more of a deterrent.
That's not going to prevent a school shooting. That's going to necessarily mitigate the negative effects of a school shooting. But if a school shooting were to occur, people would die. People would die, and you're not preventing the deaths.
Of course they're going to die because someone's walking into his school and shooting them up.
Yes. So that's why I'd rather pour money into mental health rather than...
We could spend $100 billion on mental health, and it's still going to happen. You can pour money, like pouring money into something's not going to make it. Just because you want your burger to taste better doesn't mean putting more spices on it is going to make it taste better.
Okay, before we move on to the next topic, let me just address that because that's completely. It's not necessarily about the money that you're pouring in. It's about how you're doing it and what the money is going towards specifically. Because you can't just pour money into mental health. Period. There's various institutions. There's therapy. There's multiple different kinds of therapy that you can pour it into. There's multiple different kinds of hospitalization programs that you can pour it into. And more importantly, it's how we address mental health to begin with. Because right now, the mental health solution for many therapists and many psychiatrists throughout the United States is that everyone has the same issues and it's the same solution for everyone, which is not the case. It's different for every single individual because it's mental health and it differs wildly. It differs wildly, and I think that's something that we need to address.
So
it's not about pouring more money in. It's not about pouring more money in. It's about changing the way we see mental health and how we address it.
So pouring money. Okay, not. I didn't mean to say that.
Well, you brought up $100 billion.
Well, what my point was on that is saying pouring more money into something is not going to solve it.
I agree with you. This is
just
not necessarily
just like pouring more money into Iraq didn't solve the insurgency problem in 2007 whenever we sent more and more troops over there.
Yeah, and as I just said, this isn't necessarily a
actually I
more funding
did,
or,
that's
not, or less funding issue. This is how you go about it to begin with, or what you're using the money to do in the first place.
Okay, guys. So last question, still on gun control. I have like 10 minutes left.
Okay. I'm gonna see about who else can moderate the debate while you ask it.
I can probably find someone if you want.
Okay. Could you do that right now?
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay. So would an assault weapons ban decrease not just school shootings but shootings in cities like Chicago and places like that?
No. Because
you have to go off that.
I believe that doing an assault weapons ban would be stupid because, for one, you're punishing legal gun owners, and if you're doing an assault weapons ban on, say, the big and scary AR-15, what's going to happen to the people who already have that weapon? What are you going to do with that? That's one question. Another question is, if I mean, not just school shootings, but you brought up places like Chicago, like, people are still going to get those guns. Criminals are not going to listen to laws. That's why they shoot each other. That's another thing. And if it quells school shootings, like, I highly doubt that's going to be the case, because school shootings are still going to happen. They're just going to be using different weapons. There's been times where, Virginia Tech, for an example, he didn't use an AR-15. He didn't use an assault weapon. He used two pistols. He used the Glock, and he used I believe it was a Beretta. He used two pistols for that shooting, and he killed 20 people. So, banning assault weapons is not going to solve that school shooting problem, because, people are still going to go get their mom's Glock, or their dad's Glock, and go into their school and start shooting people. It's not going to solve anything.
5 minutes.
Okay. So, I've never believed that gun control and preventing legal gun owners from getting guns is the one solution to solving the mass shooting crisis or the everyday gang violence we're seeing on a regular basis. I've never believed that, but I do believe that weapons that are designed to cause more damage, like the AR-15, and designed to cause more death and more destruction, should not be available for children and people under 21 years old to purchase. And for the most part, that's been implemented after the Parkland shooting. I wish it had been implemented before, because I think that was blatantly obvious, but now it is implemented.
Sorry, I was contacting someone to mod. So that's the other thing, is that you're cutting out. God, why is this thing acting so weird? Can you hear me? Hello?
My stream went offline. Can you hear me?
Your stream went offline?
Yeah.
Ooh.
I'm telling you I'm going to yours. Oh, now it's reconnecting.
OBS acts really weird.
Yeah. All right. Okay. All right. So as I was saying, for the gang violence. All right, we're already reconnecting.
Yep, you're back.
All right, perfect. So for the gang violence around Chicago and in Detroit, I think for the most part, you're right. It's Glocks and and there are instances where it can cause even more damage than heavy assault weapons. But as for I said this before, there's entirely different solutions for gang violence, and there's entirely different solutions for mass shootings. For gang violence, I believe it's mostly an issue of corruption on a low level, especially in Detroit. I think that's a big issue. I think that if we were to address that, we would see a net decrease.
Low level, what are you saying by that?
Like low-level county officials, because I think that's a big issue amongst police especially. I think there needs to be a reorganization of police and local government, especially in Detroit and in Chicago and wherever there's areas where there's heavy gang violence, because I think the main cause for that as well is lack of initiative and lack of just trying in general by the local government officials. And I think that's something that we're seeing in general just overall in places where there's heavy gang violence.
Honestly,
but for the most part, I do see eye to eye to you to some degree. I don't believe that gun control is the end-all solution when it comes to
any sort of gun control. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say, like, oh, you know, we need, like, well, actually, allowing legal ownership of, like, any kind of guns that are not, like, a threat to national security would be a benefit, because, I mean, you know, these guns, I mean, it's very rare that these guns are even used in school shootings. The only ones that they even try to make to look scary is guns like the AR-15, which, I mean, the AR-15, it uses... What?
There should be restrictions on, especially for...
It's not even about the gun, it's about the type of bullet that it's using. I mean, the AR-15 uses a .223 and a .556, which, I mean, you know, the .223 is also used in hunting rifles. So you can...
We can move on to the next topic. I don't think there's a whole lot for us to discuss here, because I don't think we disagree on a whole lot here.
Probably not.
Yeah. Cole, you can move on to the next one if you're still there. Is Cole still there?
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm still here. I'll give you my last question, then I have to go.
All right. PG, did you find anyone?
Not yet.
All right.
Okay. So, do you think implementing laws like they do in Australia would increase the situation here, considering they haven't had a mass shooting?
Do you want me to respond to that? Yeah, I guess I'll respond to that.
You can go ahead
first. What Australia did was just a giant buyback program in which they just seized most guns. And I don't believe that is a solution in the United States, at least. I mean, I don't know about gun control. I don't know about gun ownership in Australia. I have to look at that. But I know for a fact that you'd never ever be able to do that in the United States. Nor do I think you should, because I do believe in an active militia in the United States. I am in favor of the Second Amendment for the most part. But I don't believe in what Australia is doing in terms of gun control, because I believe it is an extreme measure. Because I do believe that you can commit violence in other ways, knives, cars as well. But as for the United States, I think that we're already actively taking the measures to prevent gun violence, and I think that for the most part they've been taken. We've seen that in Florida. They've passed multiple bills that I'm for the most part satisfied with to address the gun control issue. But as I said before, this comes back to the same issue. The one issue that we're not addressing as much as we should be is mental health. Because when it comes down to it, for the most part, I think there are instances where it isn't the case. But I believe that mental health is the issue that we need to look at when analyzing America's mass shooting incidents. I think it's the issue.
I don't know, because I don't know. In my own opinion, I believe that anything that goes against the Second Amendment, which, I mean, there can be an argument for what goes against the Second Amendment, but any ban on guns, honestly, would probably be ruled unconstitutional, because, like, especially with this current Supreme Court that we have, because I'm not saying it's because they're more conservative. I mean, I'm saying because most, like, especially the newer judges, and if Brett Kavanaugh gets accepted into it, like, they're more constitutionalists and they actually go off the Constitution. So obviously stuff like that would.
What we're getting with the Republicans and the conservative is that we're not addressing the mental health, which the Democrats aren't really addressing either, and I with that very much. But with the conservatives in the Supreme Court, you're definitely won't be addressing mental health. That's not something that the conservatives even consider an issue when it comes to at least the leadership. I'm not making a blanket statement, but for the leadership, they haven't addressed that at all. Democrats have, but not as much as I would like. And for the conservative Supreme Court, they're going to deregulate, especially when it comes to gun laws. And like I said before, I don't think that gun control is the end-all solution, but I think it's going to make it worse if you undo the legislation that that's been occurring throughout the past year in light of the Parkland shooting and Sutherland Springs shooting and the Las Vegas shooting, because legislation has been passed. Things have been done in response to those. And I think for the most part, in terms of gun control, I've been mostly satisfied. In terms of mental health, I've been very disappointed. But as for the Supreme Court, I would agree that they would take measures to deregulate what's been done to prevent mass shootings.
Yeah, I can't exactly disagree. I mean, mental health is something that's honestly ignored, and I know several people that are being affected by mental health.
Yeah, I think that everyone at this point knows someone who's being affected by mental health. It's an epidemic. It really is.
But I mean, I think, like, I mean, it's these school shootings and these shootings and stuff like that. They make it look like it's happening all the time whenever it's a very, 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 very rare occurrence.
Like, well, that's not true, because there's been over 100. Don't quote me on that, but I believe there's been over 100 mass shootings in the United States compared to where there's been single-digit mass shootings in most other countries.
And it depends on what you identify as a school shooting, because there was a CNN report. Mass shooting.
Yeah.
So it kind of depends on how you identify that, because, I mean, I saw a CNN report that literally said there's been one mass shooting, like, every week since 2018 started. And, I mean, I looked at it, and they literally counted a BB gun being shot at a student in a middle school in New York as a mass shooting. So,
regardless,
most of that, like, I mean, it's probably a lie of how they're identifying a mass shooting. In any case, there's probably been only maybe a dozen.
I don't really disagree with you, and I think we should probably move on to a different topic. Necessarily strongly disagree.
I actually really don't have I don't have any mods that I can actually, like, introduce yet. Like, no one's really responding to me. Because I'm trying to find a non-biased person. I almost got one of my friends in here, but he probably would be really biased, and he'd start, like, screaming your head off. Because that's what he said to me.
But Cole, are you still on?
Huh?
Did Cole leave?
Yeah, he left, like, right after he asked that question.
All right. How about we pause? How about we pause the live stream just until we can get someone else?
I mean, you can't really pause the live stream. You would just have to end the live stream.
Yeah. This is my first time doing this. I have no idea.
Yeah, you can't pause it.
All right. I do want to go back to socialism, though, because I think we kind of wasted.
Yeah, I mean, we can go back. We can go back to that. We can probably just revisit some of the topics until we can find someone.
Because it's a big topic. It's something I wanted to discuss heavily, and we really wasted on World War II.
In my own opinion, like, World War II has a pivotal role in how the Great Depression ended. That's why I started bringing it up, because my point is that Nazi Germany had a very, very quick recovery after Hitler got in, because the economic policies that he was introducing were
but the Depression ended before World War II.
What?
The Depression ended before World War II.
And how do you think that?
Because World War II began on 1939, and the Great Depression ended in 1938.
In the United States or as a whole?
I'm gonna check it right now. I know I said no looking up, but I think that's just factual data that.
I don't care if you look something up. That's what I've been doing.
I kind of do, because it's. I think we should rely mostly on our peripheral knowledge for this debate, but this is just like factual data that shouldn't really be disagreed on for the most part. Yeah, there's no start and end. There's no really start and ending point, but I wouldn't say, for the United States at least, I would not say that I think the World War II absolutely caused us to become more powerful. Oh wait, Max just asked a question. How much of what I earn belongs to you and why? That's not necessarily how that's like the whole can of worms I don't want to get into. But with World War II, I think that the war absolutely benefited the United States economically, but I don't think it's the cause for the end of the Great Depression. I think for the most part, and this has been agreed for the most part by most economists and historians, that the
because I mean, I'm looking at stuff right now that, sorry for interrupting you, but like I'm looking at stuff right now that there was a sort of recovery between 1933 and 1937, and around 1938 the whole thing just came crashing down again. And that's what that's kind of like a thing that I'm looking at.
GDP growth,
industrial production in the United States.
Oh, okay, that's not the same as economic growth.
And where is it?
I'm looking at GDP growth right now. After
GDP growth was going up, and I'm looked at the same things. So
yeah,
in 1929 it started to shoot back down. Same thing happens in 1933. It reaches the very low point.
Once you look at unemployment rates, after FDR took office, unemployment plummeted.
But you're still seeing the same exact thing happening right in 1938. You're seeing, like, unemployment does the same exact thing. Unemployment shoots right back up right before the Depression ended. Or officially ended. And it shoots right back up to about 23%.
Okay, you're cutting it out.
In 19...
All right.
Am I cutting out? Can you hear me?
Right when you can I hear me?
I could not hear a thing. Everything you said before just cut out. I couldn't hear anything.
Okay, yeah, I know. I could hear myself. Okay, so what I'm saying is that
the stream is and I can hear you fine now.
Yeah, it's probably like because there's so much internet connection being sucked up by your live stream. That's probably why.
Yeah. I'm fine now. You can say what you said before.
So what I'm saying is that like the same thing happens in every single data chart that you're looking at. Unemployment, GDP growth. All of this similar graphing is the same thing that you see right whenever 1938 hits. Because there's just this sudden crash of everything. God, I can hear myself. There's a sudden crash of just everything.
The Depression ended around. It didn't start in 1939.
No, it started in 1929, ended around 1940.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, people can disagree whether or not the Depression continued up until that point. I think there were initially around that point, but it was still dismally poor.
There was no true recovery until World War II was started, especially whenever the United States got involved.
Well, no, there was FDR recovered the economy. That's just a fact. Whether it's GDP growth, whether it's job growth, whether it's industrial growth, FDR's principles and progressive economic principles brought the United States out of the Depression and led us into World War II. And I think that World War II absolutely made the United States better as an economic power, but it wasn't recovery. That was just further economic growth. And Max just asked a great question in the chat. Didn't the Soviet Union show that socialism can't work? I can respond. Do you want me to respond to that first, or do you want to respond to it?
No, you can go ahead.
Okay. So I said this before earlier in the debate. Socialism is a huge umbrella term that means pretty much anything from the USSR, China, North Korea, and Canada, which are all governments and economic institutions that differ wildly from each other. And form of socialism, which I advocate for, is social democracy, which is basically just a capitalist system. Like social democracy, if implemented, is just basically a capitalist system with socialist or early Marxist principles in place to help regulate the economy. I think Keynesian economics plays a big role there as well. But USSR was Marxist. It was anarcho-Marxist, which was a principle in which you make everyone have equal wealth, equal opportunity, and that's not what I advocate for, and that's not what I think many American progressives and social democrats advocate for either. In fact, many social democrats and democratic socialists around the time of the Cold War were some of the most vocal protesters to the USSR. So that's my answer to that.
Let me go ahead and reread that question. I believe that the socialism that we look at today in Canada and Scandinavia and stuff like that, it's not like, you can say that it's a different kind of thing, but it's not socialism. It's not socialism that they're using.
Well, your definition of is. What's your definition of socialism?
Total government control.
Okay, but that's not the definition of socialism that many people get. It gets very confusing when you're using socialism interchangeably with communism, which is what you just described. Total government control of the economy is communism. And socialism and communism are not the same thing by any stretch of the imagination. To say so would be just completely and totally factually incorrect.
Okay. So this is what the definition of socialism is telling me. It's a range of economic and social systems characterized by social ownership and workers' self-management of the means of production, as well as the political theories and movements associated with them.
That's a cool definition, but people aren't using it colloquially. That's the term, right? How do you pronounce that? Whatever. People are not using that term to describe it, like to describe that. People have stretched the definition to its limits, to the point where that's not even the definition to describe democratic socialism or democracy. Do you
advocate for socialism, or do you advocate for democratic socialism?
Again, there's a what is socialism to you? Is socialism basically the same as communism to you? Because I don't advocate for communism.
I believe that there's not that much of a difference between socialism and communism.
But socialism is a bunch of different. Communism is underneath socialism. Do you understand that? Like it's a giant umbrella term that encompasses communism.
Yes, it's an umbrella term, but it's been used in the same exact sense out of all the countries that have tried to use it in its entirety. The countries that have implemented it.
The term that I'm using it in, which is how it should be used as a state in economics and politics, is an umbrella term encompassing many different political ideologies advocating for some degree of government involvement. To me, socialism is just a general term stating government involvement.
But so the countries that have actually used socialism in the sense that Karl Marx originally wanted, all of those countries have collapsed.
What do you mean? Like, every single country has collapsed?
Yes, all of the countries that have used Karl Marx's socialism has collapsed.
Which is, yeah, and Karl Marx's socialism is the ideology that leads to communism. Is not.
But there wouldn't be no socialism without Karl Marx. Karl Marx is the one who originally created the idea of socialism.
And then people took his writings and then made it varied and produced many different.
But you don't see countries such as FDR. Like FDR didn't use socialism as an idea for.
No, he used progressivism.
Yeah, but that does not inherently make the United States socialist.
What?
Earlier, I think what?
You're kind of cutting out. Just go on.
Earlier, you were talking about the United States being more socialist because of like programs such as Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, stuff like that.
That is not what I said.
Or I thought you did. But I'm not gonna like accuse you of like saying all these stuff.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is that
that's not what I believe. That's not what I believe.
But socialism, what my point is that socialism is still a failure. All the times that it's been used in all of the countries, Venezuela, North Korea, probably not North Korea, China, the United
Venezuela. I'm very glad you brought up Venezuela. Let me talk about Venezuela. People cite Venezuela as a failure of democratic socialism and social democracy, but
not democratic socialism, socialism, just socialism.
What? But again, I'm not going to use socialism as a very specific term, which is what you're using it as, and it makes it very confusing. I'm using the specific ideology that Nicolas
socialism
Maduro
in any sense.
Hugo Chavez used in Venezuela was democratic socialism, but
it was more of a dictatorship. It was more similar to something the USSR
it's a dictatorship
used.
Using democratic socialism.
What? How is democratic socialism?
Venezuela isn't failing because of democratic socialism. It's failing because led by corrupt and vicious leaders who are just doing whatever they can for personal gain. That's not a failure of democratic socialism. That's a failure of leadership.
Ouch. I'm just trying to process how you think that Venezuela was democratically socialist, because
democratic socialism by definition
they've always been a command economy.
Yeah, but democratic socialism also advocates for a command economy,
and that's the problem with any kind of socialist policy, like from Marxist-Leninism to democratic socialism.
Okay.
Any sort of command economy will result in failure.
You're very confused about what socialism, but I'll explain to you what my personal beliefs in social democracy are and progressivism are.
That is also the problem. That is the problem, that no one can agree on what democratic socialism is.
Yeah.
When no one can agree on that, that's how the ideology fails.
I'm describing social democracy and progressivism as a whole. Progressivism in general advocates for Keynesian economics, which is something that I'm very much in favor for, and something I very much believe has been a success. Keynesian economic theory advocates for a small wage and income gap between the rich and the wealthy, and that's not a moral argument. That is an economic argument. I was saying to start off the video, when you have money, and you haven't addressed Keynesian economics at all, which is the main tenet of social democracy as an economic system. When you have money all towards the top, rather than money flowing evenly through the economy, especially towards the middle class, you will have economic stagnation and inflation because that money is not flowing, because the rich do not spend as rapidly per capita as the middle class does.
Actually, they do. They spend way more money than anyone else because they actually have money.
Not as rapidly, not per capita. I said
so.
In general, yes, obviously they spend more, but not per capita.
Technically, is it a bad thing that people are making money?
What?
Is it a bad thing that people make money?
I never said that.
But why should...
Now you're putting words in my mouth.
No. No, you brought up a point that I completely forgot about, and you just brought it up.
Okay,
because
what is your point then?
A lot of the things that you see right now with a lot of people is they say like eat the rich, like the rich are the worst people in the world. Top 1%, top like 0.1%, 0.01%. Like no, that's a huge point about democratic socialism and progressive that like rid the Democratic Party right now.
Big point of social democracy.
What?
That's a big point of Bernie Sanders' rhetoric on politics.
That's not just Bernie Sanders. That's people like. That's not just Bernie Sanders. That's literally
is who popularized the whole top 1% argument.
But now half of the Democratic Party is starting to spout that kind of rhetoric.
Yeah, and I don't agree with it because I think it's not only
Andrew
fear-mongering.
Gillum, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez,
Okay, but you're not speaking
Elizabeth
about Alexandria
Warren,
Ocasio-Cortez. You're speaking to me.
Christian
You're speaking to me,
Gillibrand.
and I don't agree with that rhetoric. So I don't know why you're arguing with me about it, because I don't agree with it and I don't defend it. I don't agree with the rhetoric because it's fear-mongering for the most part, and it's not solving the
No,
actual
because you
issue.
call yourself a progressive. That's why I'm saying that.
Okay,
That
but I'm just trying-
ideology as a whole and progressivism. Because if you say that you're a progressive, you're most likely identifying with the current day progressives of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
I am. I'm identifying with their ideology. Rhetoric. It's two different things.
But if you identify with their ideology, then you're protecting that specific thing that they want. They want a command economy. They want...
Okay, my views are my own. My views are not Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's or Bernie Sanders. My views are my own, and my views are that I don't believe that the rhetoric that they're using.
But the only candidates and people that are actually spouting the same rhetoric that you want, and the only choice that you probably have, is people like Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. It's because it's the only thing that you can do right now is generalize.
You're not arguing with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or Bernie Sanders, you're arguing with me. And let me tell you what I personally believe when it comes to that. I don't believe in fear-mongering about the top 1%. I believe in closing the tax loopholes such as tax havens and shell companies in order to promote the economy, because those loopholes that the rich are using damage the economy and damage us in the long term. I believe that once those loopholes are closed, we can look at on an individual basis whether or not we should raise or lower the taxes on the rich. Because once those loopholes are closed, you will have a completely different way of going about it. Because for the most part, I think the rich get away with a lot because of those loopholes. They're able to get away with what?
Get away with
getting through the taxes, which are high on them, and they're able to get through because of those loopholes. And once those loopholes are
would taxing them even higher solve that problem?
Did you hear what I said? I said that once you close the tax loopholes that they're using,
tax loopholes are completely irrelevant whenever you're being taxed.
How is it irrelevant to the discussion of democratic socialism or so?
You're obviously going to be looking for different ways to try to avoid your taxes whenever half of your income is being taken away by the government. That's what taxation is. It's putting a gun to your head and saying, give me your money.
Okay. Now you're making the Ben Shapiro argument regarding taxation, which is completely and utterly delusional. The taxation by nature should benefit you in the end. That's money that's going towards your society. That's money that's going towards your town. That's money that's paving your road. That's money that's going towards your institutions. That's money that's in the end should go back in your pocket. It's not theft, which is what Ben Shapiro and what you're and the argument that you're making now.
Do you disagree that taxation is theft?
I completely disagree with taxation is theft because that money in the end is being spent on services.
It's because you don't. It is basically. I'm not trying to act like Ben Shapiro. I mean, Ben Shapiro makes some good arguments, but at the same time,
I think he's the most intelligent speaker I've ever heard. I greatly admire Ben Shapiro.
But at the same time, whenever you don't have a choice to pay your taxes or not, then that's whenever the theft part comes in. Because, I
understand. We're really veering away from the topic at this point. Let's go back to tax loopholes because that's really where we are. You said that tax loopholes are irrelevant in this argument, which I completely disagree with because you can't have
it's because that's more socialist policy it goes into taxes because like a lot of socialist policies advocate for higher taxes on the rich, sometimes even the middle class, stuff like that. Like, because I mean, people always try to say, well, okay, well,
I'm trying to be specific. I'm trying to be specific and not generalize. Specifically, tax loopholes. So can we stay on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. As I was saying, you cannot have a rational discussion regarding whether or not you should tax the rich higher or less until you close the tax loopholes, because the tax rate is for the most part irrelevant because that's not actually what they're paying. They're getting out of that because of those tax loopholes, and until you close them, until you close off the tax havens, until you close off the shell companies, and until you close off the various amount of tax breaks that they can use to their advantage if they're a big company, then you cannot talk about raising or lowering the taxes because the reality is that people don't know whether or not the tax should be raised or lowered because the loopholes are a completely different variable that changes everything regarding the tax system. And that's not being acknowledged at all, whether it's Bernie Sanders who doesn't acknowledge it and whether it's, well, he does acknowledge it, but he acknowledges that he doesn't acknowledge it, but he does not acknowledge it when he's talking about taxing the 1%. And once you take that into consideration, you really can't advocate for whether or not you want to raise or lower the taxes, because there's an entirely different variable that's not being taken into consideration. Do you disagree?
I don't know, I'm kind of mixed. Okay.
Because I agree that the rich are taxed a lot, but the amount of loopholes that they use in general for their businesses, for the most part, allow them to get out of that high taxation. That's not looked at all. That's not looked at all by the right deliberately in order to make it look like the rich are paying share.
Do you think a flat tax would work?
I am in favor of a progressive tax.
And what would a progressive tax look like?
I think it depends based on the state of the economy and on the state of inflation. And I think like as I said before, you have to remove those loopholes in order to have a conversation at all about a progressive tax.
Okay, I'm asking percentages. What would a progressive tax look like?
In terms of what? In terms of the rich? In terms of the middle class?
All of them.
Well, there's different rates applying to each tax bracket depending on which one you're talking about. So you can't ask me to give a tax rate for all of them.
In the ones that we have right now, the ones that were instituted under the Tax Cut and Jobs Act.
Okay.
Because we only have, I think we have about 3 tax brackets now.
Yeah, that's what the tax bill did. It limited it to 3 tax brackets. And what we're seeing with the tax bill right now is we're seeing small benefits for the middle class, and that's mostly a result of the giant amounts of deficit that's being created as a result of the bill. And we're seeing the rich win more than any other group whatsoever. I mean, you can make the argument that the middle class is benefiting from the tax bill currently, but the rich are benefiting far more, and in the end, that's widening the income gap. Even if the middle class is benefiting, which they won't be in a few years, because statistics show that the tax bill will in the end negatively affect them. It's already negatively affecting people in suburban areas like where I live on Long Island. People are being heavily affected by the tax bill because it raises their taxes there on real estate. And
see that whole like you said something in the middle of that. It's the what did you say, like not wage gap? It's a
income gap.
Income gap. Like, that argument is so overused that...
Well, I kind of use it interchangeably.
The income gap, of course there's going to be an income gap. Okay. Like,
let me rephrase myself then. Let me rephrase myself. The wealth gap. The gap between how much...
Of course there's going to be a wealth gap. That's one of the things that people never realize.
You can't have everyone make the same amount of money. That'd be insane. But if you're...
Would that... Wait, hang on. Would that be a good thing if everyone made the same amount of money?
It absolutely would not be a good thing. You're eliminating the initiative for people to work if everyone's making the same amount of money. Okay.
So...
That's a communist principle, and that's something that I vehemently disagree with. So that just goes hand in hand with the fact that social communism don't
a lot of people that like literally advocate for like a closer income gap and stuff like that. Those are usually the people that say, well, we should make the same amount of money. We need to do this. We need to do that. Like, stuff like that is completely... It's a completely bad idea to even argue about the income gap, because obviously I'm probably, like, the place I'm working at, I'm probably making more money than 30,000 other people. Like, of course, like, because what I'm being paid at, like, it's not that much, but of course I'm making more money than a lot of other people. There's an income gap right there. There's people that work at McDonald's that are making more money than anyone else. That's an income gap.
When it comes to the wealth gap, I'm not just talking about the income gap. I'm talking about the wealth gap.
Okay, wealth gap. It kind of goes hand in hand, because again, there's still a wealth gap there with people who are making minimum wage.
Yeah, there's going to be a gap. There's obviously going to be a gap. You can't have the rich having the same amount of money.
But why should that be a bad thing, that there's people who are making millions and millions of dollars because they're the CEO of a company?
Gap is not a bad thing. let me explain myself. The existence of a gap to begin with is not a bad thing. However, the existence of a large gap is a bad thing because that eliminates economic improvement and that eliminates economic progress.
Actually, it doesn't, because there's none. Like, if there's
Look at Reaganomics. Look at Reaganomics. Reaganomics did great things for the American economy while Reagan was in office, and then once George H.W. Bush took office, those same economic principles were maintained and kept for a long period of time, and we saw stagflation. Where stagnation.
It's because their economic philosophy and values were completely different. H.W. and Reagan were pretty different people.
Their economic policies were virtually the same.
It wouldn't be the same if there was an economic collapse in the 90s.
What?
I said their policies wouldn't have been the same if there was there was a difference. There was a difference because, I mean, one of the reasons he lost his re-election bid is because he started to
decline, and then saved it.
Like, he started increasing taxes. He completely went against one of the promises that he made on the campaign trail. Like, he increased taxes.
I'm not talking about no new taxes. I'm talking about the wage gap or the income. I'm sorry, I'm using the terms interchangeably, and I really shouldn't. I'm just going to say the wealth gap because that's really encompasses all of them together. Do you agree?
Wait, what?
I'm just going to use wealth gap when referring to the gap in general.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I keep saying. That's why I keep on saying, like, wage gap and income gap.
The wealth gap under Reagan and the wealth gap under HW was huge, and it grew especially under HW Bush, and that's when we started to see economic stagnation. That's when we started to see that, because when you widen the gap, you will. This is the whole basis of Keynesian economics, which and you're saying that the gap has no negative benefit, no negative causes to the economy, and Keynesian economics is basically the opposite of that. The gap is when you have. I said this repeatedly. I'm going to say it again, I guess. But when you have wealth, all towards the top, when all your capital is at the top in a select group of people, they're not going to spend it as rapidly per capita as the middle classes. When the middle class is strong and that money is being flowed evenly through the middle class, then that's money that's being spent rapidly, quickly on appliances, on computers, on phones, on cars, on food, on businesses. With the wealthy, they're spending large amounts of money, but it's not happening rapidly. It's not happening at a quick pace because they have all the money they need.
But who are the people who own all this money? Like the supposed top 1%. Who are those people?
Are you talking about specific people, or are you talking about in terms?
I'm talking about who they are in general. Who are they?
Well, I mean, I believe it's at 50,000 people who are qualified for the top 1%.
No, I'm talking about what they do.
Well, how's that relevant?
It's because there's a reason they have all that money, and they I'm not saying that it would like
argument that I disagree with people being wealthy, which is not what I believe.
No, I'm saying that what your point was is that there's a whole point to saying, okay, well, these people don't if all these people had all this money, they're not going to spend it as much as, like the poor and the middle class and stuff like that. Like that's not true, because they're spending that money. There's a reason they have all that money. It's because they keep reinvesting that money.
No, but that's large amounts of money being taken out at once. That's not. I'm talking about in terms of per capita. You're talking about in terms overall. It becomes confusing.
But in the system that we have right now, inflation is still going down. If your point was true, inflation would be going up.
This is an argument regarding inflation. This is an argument regarding.
No, you're talking about like more money going into the economic system and stuff like that. That ties right back into inflation.
You clearly missed my entire point regarding Keynesian economics, because that's not what I said at all.
What is Keynesian economics to you?
I've explained it. This is my fourth time explaining it. Keynesian economic theory, which is the basis of the economic theory for democratic socialism and social democracy especially, and the progressive movement overall, boils down to the fact that when you have a lot of capital and a lot of money, I feel like a broken record, and I I guess I'm explaining this again, but when you have a lot of capital and a lot of wealth towards the top, towards a select small group of people in terms of the entire population, then that money is not being spent and distributed as evenly as it is per capita, not overall. You're talking about in terms of overall. I'm talking about in terms of per capita, which completely changes everything regarding Keynesian economics. Per capita, the middle class spends more money on appliances and on utilities than the top 1% does.
Are you saying that Keynesian economics is basically democratic socialism, or because I don't think, like, I kind of have a basic understanding of what Keynesian economics is, and Keynesian economics is way more capitalistic than socialist.
Keynesian economics, for the most part, is meant to operate within. So yes, it's a social democratic system.
It's not.
Yes, it is. It's the main tenet of social democracy.
Keynesian economics is like strongly. It says it right here that there are various macroeconomic theories about how, in the short run, and especially during recessions, economic output is strongly influenced by aggregate demand, or the total demand in the economy.
Exactly.
But it has nothing to do with, like, any sort of socialistic policy.
Well, by nature, Keynesian economics can actually be applied anywhere. But the whole
we've been way more Keynesian, but like it's a mistake to even try to say that we were more socialistic whenever most of the stuff was actually literally just being given to us by Keynesian economics.
That's not true. Keynesian economics was utilized by FDR and was somewhat utilized by Obama during the recovery following the 2008 housing crisis.
So they weren't socialistic, they were just being Keynesian.
But Keynesian economics by nature is a progressive movement.
It's not.
It is.
How?
Because you're advocating for reducing the wage gap or the wealth gap between the middle class and the wealthy class, which is the basis of everything social democratic.
No, again, Keynesian economics is more based off of demand. It's not doing anything to say about it has nothing to do with any sort of wage gap.
Not demand, aggregate demand. Do you know what aggregate demand is? Do you know what aggregate demand is?
Again,
if you don't know, it's fine.
I'm not exactly like familiar with a lot of this stuff. I'm not an economics expert.
You're referring to aggregate demand as though it's demand itself, which is not true. Aggregate demand is the total spending overall by.
No, it's not spending. It's demand. It's the total demand for final goods and services in an economy at a given time.
Yes,
that's aggregate demand. Not spending.
Okay, but spending and demand goes hand in hand. So the amount of spending goes hand in hand with the demand there is. In order to create demand in the first place, you need money to be flowing evenly throughout the middle class, which is what Keynesian economics stands for. This was a theory developed during the Great Depression, and it was used by FDR in order to out of the Great Depression.
But Keynesian economics weren't even introduced until 1936.
Yeah. During the Great Depression, exactly.
Yeah, but not in the beginning. That was like 3 years after the peak of the Great Depression.
Okay, but he was still instituting things that lie in Keynesian economics.
In 1933. That was 3 years before his book was even released.
It doesn't mean the principles regarding Keynesian economics didn't exist before compiled into a book by John Keynes in 1936. It existed in principle before then, just like socialism existed before Karl Marx wrote about it. Okay,
so this is also what it also says. It says Keynesian economists generally argue that as aggregate demand is volatile and unstable, a market economy will often experience inefficient macroeconomic outcomes in the form of economic recessions when demand is low and inflation whenever demand becomes higher.
Exactly.
These are mitigated by economic policy responses, in particular monetary policy by the central bank and fiscal policy, actions by the government, which can help stabilize output over the business cycle. So it's not a progressive
That is progressive.
It's not progressive. That's literally depending on capitalism to solve your problem.
Yeah, and progressivism does.
Progressivism is not anything near capitalism.
Are you kidding? Progressivism is a capitalist system. You pit socialism and capitalism as though it's polar forces when that cannot be further from the truth. It cannot be further from the truth. Progressivism is a capitalist system.
Progressivism is literal. Well, progressivism in the beginning is not even.
And you're right.
It's not an economic policy. Progressivism is a social policy.
In a capitalist system, not a communist, which is why it by nature is progressive, because progressivism is a capitalist-based system.
Progressivism is not an economic system in the first place. It should not be touted.
Just like conservatism isn't an economic system to begin with. There's the principles within conservatism that are economic, just like with progressivism. In tenet of progressivism in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, any like literally one of the things is that
we're starting to go in circles, and the debate is already like 2 hours longer than we wanted it to be.
Hey, it's almost we're only 5 minutes from being 2 hours.
Yeah, but I think you want to close it. I think we're good. I feel pretty.
Oh, I kind of wanted to ask one more thing.
All right, you can ask one more thing. Go ahead.
So, do you think free speech should be limited?
It depends.
Do you think someone should be able to say the N-word at any point in time, whenever they want?
Whether or not they should, or whether or not they legally are allowed to, things. Obviously, my morals say no, but they legally are allowed to do that. I mean, and they're.
Do you think someone should be able to, for example, like support Hitler, support his ideas, like openly say like?
Okay, I'm just gonna say what I believe.
Openly say like Jews are bad people. If he's not saying that they need to be killed, but he says that they are bad people, or if someone says black people are bad, Mexicans are bad, blah blah blah, like, do you think people like that should be arrested?
It is completely legal to say whatever you want, however racist, however bigoted, or however horrible it is, as long as it doesn't.
Depends on what state you're in, actually, because I mean, if you go to California, they're probably going to arrest you.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's why I'm asking that, is saying
my views regarding free speech is that unless you can directly see that someone's freedom of speech or someone's speech is invoking violence in some way, then there's no reason why it should be limited. Which is very libertarian, actually. I drift away from liberalism in that regard. I believe that people could say whatever the hell they want as long as it doesn't harm another person.
But you could literally say, well, depends on what your definition of harm is. It's not basic, all like speech. It's never physical. It's always emotional. So whenever you say, as long as it's not hurting someone. I'm cutting out. God, I hate this.
All right, I think it's time to wrap it up.
Yeah, I know. I was going to finish my point.
Okay, go ahead.
And yeah, just if this does go on for another 5 minutes, like OBS is going to cut out, because like OBS likes to cut out every 2 hours during a live stream. But so what my point was is that like socialism. Or oh shit! I'm
socialism, one's freedom of speech.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking of something else. So what my point was is that you could like, whenever you say, well, as long as you're not directly like attacking someone, they could, like, it always goes up to the person who's like Jewish or black or something like that, because they're obviously like feeling attacked. They feel, okay, well, he hurt my feelings. He's speaking against.
Are they being harmed? Unless they're being physically harmed, unless they're
not physically, they're being verbally harmed. They're being mentally harmed.
Mentally harmed. Unless someone's freedom of speech endangers someone's safety, I don't care if they're offended.
Most of the time it doesn't. But
No
we
one
still,
should be-
but
no one
there
should
are
be
still
jailed for
laws in
offending
certain
someone else.
states and countries that
Okay.
directly
dis-
say,
Okay.
like, you cannot say this because it'll hurt this person's feelings.
Yeah, I disagree with that. And I think for the most part, you're making a mischaracterization of every other country in terms of their freedom of speech laws. But I do agree with the principle that freedom of speech should be completely free unless it directly harms someone's safety or someone's well-being. Can we leave
Okay.
off on that note?
You're cutting out again.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. Can we leave off on that? I mean,
Yeah, we can go ahead and leave off on that.
all right. All right. So thank you to everyone who tuned into the debate. I thought it was pretty good. What'd you think? What'd you think?
Yeah, I liked it. I mean, for
Yeah.
first like actual debate on my channel, it was actually pretty interesting.
Yeah, I agree. But this was kind of there was a lot of disorganization. We probably should have managed it better. But for
I
the
mean,
most
I mean
part-
that's as good as you're gonna do it, unless you literally want to go in with like specific
Yeah.
questions, stuff like that. That's usually how a debate works. You can't really organize it. They're always going to be disorganized unless you literally want a Lincoln Douglas debate, which obviously I'm not gonna do a Lincoln Douglas debate. That's just way too
yeah, me neither.
formal.
I agree.
Like,
But, okay. So thank you guys. So thank you everyone for watching. I think my stream pretty much cut out most of the time. So PG, could you send me the video once?
well,
once
it's still
I-
gonna post. Like, I mean, like if it cuts out and then comes back, it's going to post like in its entirety. I think
Okay.
like in
Well, if it
those
doesn't, then it's
areas,
videos,
it's gonna.
I mean.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean,
Okay.
I can probably go through.
All right. I'm gonna close the stream now. Thank you guys, everyone. Thank you for watching, and hopefully we'll do more of this. And did thoroughly enjoy this. And thank you for initiating this to begin with, PG, because you came to me.
Hell yeah. I'll make sure to
Yeah.
do another meme just in case we want to debate again. Alright, I'm
All
gonna go
right.
ahead and leave the call real quick. Or I'll mute myself.
All right. See ya.
See? Alright, so guys, that is actually the debate between me and Zach Z. If you guys actually like this, go ahead and leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. I actually thought that was a very, very interesting debate. Got me to actually you could actually hear me for a second there. But this was actually the first actual debate that I actually held on my channel. So guys, if you guys like this, go ahead and leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and I will see you guys in the next video. I don't know what it's going to be. Thank you so much, Dan S, for subscribing to me. That actually helps me out a lot. I am about to hit 1,500 subscribers, so that is actually going to be very, very good. So guys, if you guys actually like this, again, do that. Donate to my channel with super chats, and yeah. If you guys actually want to see more debates, get people to actually challenge me to debates. If you want to challenge me to debate, then I will gladly debate you. If you actually want to see me go against another channel that you like, go ahead and suggest that they should actually debate me. And yeah. So before this live stream actually cuts out because of the 2-hour mark, I'm going to go ahead and end it right now. So guys, I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys there.